Now I'll introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Aditya Abhyankar. Dr. Aditya Abhyankar is 2 years younger than me, and he is the Dean of Technology of Pune. He is a visiting faculty at many foreign and Indian universities and colleges. He is a consultant to many MNCs. He also is an expert in biometrics and pattern recognition. No, I'll have to say all these things. You do so much that I have to talk about it now. He has multiple degrees, actually. He started with a BE, then he went on to do his MS in US, then he did his PhD there. Now he's doing his second PhD here. And because you cannot enroll yourself in 2 courses in the same university, he has done his MA in Sanskrit, he's also doing his MA in philosophy. He has also done his MBA. I don't know, I mean, you just Google him and he has such a glittering list of degrees and everything, and he keeps studying everything. The second PhD that he is doing is on the comparative analysis of the Big Bang Theory and Nasadiya Brahma Sutras. That's the range. So, so I actually mentioned his age because of this, that he has done so much in at such a young age. He is also one of the youngest researchers in India. He is recognized as a scientist. I think on Wednesday he got an award from the CM of Maharashtra in Nagpur as the youngest scientist. I don't know, I asked for the details, he never gives them to me, so I don't have a written profile of his. I am just saying all the things that I know of from all the years that we've known him. He was really kind enough to accept this invitation. He was not ready. He was saying that a keynote speaker has to be somebody with experience. But I think knowledge always beats experience. So we are really safe there. A big round of applause for Dr. Aditya Abhyankar. I invite him for his address. He's going to talk on why research, something that we are talking about in UDAN also.
Namaste and good morning. At the outset, I would like to take this opportunity and thank the organizers. And when I say so, I mean it. It's a wonderful platform that has been created. And I'm actually privileged that I'm getting this opportunity to do this dialogue with all of you. And I'm pretty sure when I was getting introduced, at least 2 questions must have popped in your minds. Number 1, what a person without a single gray hair is going to talk on. And secondly, oh boy. No offense meant for Gerard. And oh boy, he's a professor. And professors, they have to speak at least for 55 minutes, 1 hour. But not really. I'm going to keep it strictly to 30 minutes. I also know that the next keynote speaker is very experienced, and I'm myself looking forward to listen to him. So what I really intend to do in next 25 odd minutes is pose few interesting questions that I have myself in my mind. And probably as a community of technical communicators, technical writers, we can think about it. We'll try and form consensus and see if we can take few of the things in certain direction. So the theme that I have chosen is why research. And I honestly believe that questions which begin with why are more interesting questions compared to questions which begin with what and how and when, for example. To support my hypothesis, let me give you one example. I don't know how many of you still follow cricket after god of cricket, Sachin Tendulkar, got retired. But if you still do, then you must have followed the recently concluded test series between India and South Africa. It's true. And if I ask you that what happened in that test series, then you can probably tell me that we won 3-0. It was a comfortable victory. If I ask you how exactly it happened, you can tell me the scores. If I ask you when exactly it happened, you can tell me the dates. But the moment I ask you why exactly it happened, then all of us, we can have our own sweet perspectives. And the interesting part is, no perspective is going to be a wrong perspective. Someone might say that, you know what, the change of guards, Virat Kohli was able to lead the team so emphatically. Someone might say a few of the key players of South Africa, like Hashim Amla, who really play well against India, they simply didn't click. Someone might say our spin bowlers, Ashwin and Jadeja, they really brought in the olden golden tradition of Indian spin bowling. So the point is, all of us can have our own sweet perspective. And these questions which begin with why, they make us think on different levels. And the questions which get raised, they are very difficult to answer. And in my honest opinion, that leads us towards research. Sometimes it's felt that research is something that's done at NASA. And you can ask me this question, that why are you discussing this in this particular forum? Research is something that happens in NASA. In my honest opinion, if you really want to see a good piece of research, just observe your mothers cooking in the kitchen. That's where maximum amount of research happens. Every day is new, every dish is new, and there is so much scope for bringing in innovation. I honestly believe that we lack that culture in country as a whole. And as a technical fraternity, we should be aware of this. We should be sensitive about it. You might also pose this question that, is that so? Is it really that serious? And again, to support my hypothesis, what I plan to do is, I'm going to share one teaser with you. Then I plan to share one very interesting story with you. And then I would like to give a concrete technical example. Since we are a forum of technical people, technical writers, I'd like to provide one very specific technical case study as well. Let's begin with the teaser. I mean, is it really alarming? Without research, what exactly are we going to lose? Let's think about this. I'm talking about something that is very close to our hearts, something that we follow day in and day out, something that we follow every single day. I'm talking about the calendar that we follow. And it's a very interesting system that we follow. The first month of our calendar is January. And second month is February, in which we get odd number of days. 27, if you're leap year, it's 28. And have we really thought about this? That why at all do we get odd number of days in the second month of my calendar? I mean, it is okay if at all I have to make an adjustment. I have to make sure that total number of days are 365 in a year's time. And if at all I have to make that adjustment, I should typically do that in the last month of my calendar system. I should do that in December. But why suddenly in the second month of my calendar, I get odd number of days? Is it not really funny? The point is, we hardly get time, we hardly get bandwidth to even think about these smaller issues. Let's play a game. I work in the field of pattern recognition, and majority of the algorithms that we develop are iterative. And we say, iterations after iterations, the algorithm would march on towards the solution. So there is that English saying, marching on towards the thing. So let March be the first month of our new calendar system. And then April becomes the second month, and May will be the third month, and it continues. And as we are in the seventh month, in Sanskrit, 7 is represented by Sapta, and we get September. The 8th month in Sanskrit is called as Ashta, and we get October. And the 9th month is Navam, and we get November. And the 10th month is Dasham, and we get December. And January now becomes 11th month, and now February becomes the last month of my new calendar system, and it makes sense. It's more logical to make every sort of adjustment in the last month of my new calendar system, isn't it? We typically follow Mother Nature. And if you just look around, most of the new things would typically start happening in the months of March or April. If you look at all the conventional systems, if you look at Buddhist calendar, the new year begins at around March or April. If you look at Gregorian calendar, if you look at Chinese New Year, if you look at Hindu New Year, Padwa, if you look at Iranian calendar, all these conventional systems, they suggest starting your calendar in the month of March or April. And in spite of that, the whole globe, the entire universe, follows a very strange system in which suddenly in the second month, we get odd number of days. The point that I'm trying to raise is, we don't raise such kind of questions. We accept the things blindly. And that's because that's how our educational system has been put in place. Majority of the times, our examination patterns are memory oriented. They hardly test our concepts. So very rarely we get platforms. Very rarely we get opportunities wherein we'll be able to raise interesting questions, conceptual questions, questions which begin with why, towards really understanding the things without accepting them absolutely blindly. Let me share a very interesting story with you. The story is very close to my heart because the story is interesting, but what we can derive out of this story is even more interesting. This story is taken from Plato's literature. You might have heard of the trio of philosophers from Greece land. The guru is obviously Socrates, his disciple Plato, and Plato's disciple was Aristotle, who then went on to become the guru of Alexander the Great. So Plato is the connecting link between Socrates and Alexander, and he has written a number of beautiful books, out of which one which is my favorite is The Republican. And this story is taken from that book. It's a story about two friends traveling in a desert. Out of these two friends, one is a blind fellow. So unfortunately, that person cannot see. And the other person is a normal fellow just like you and me. And while traveling in a desert, suddenly that normal fellow says, "Oh, for a cup of milk." See, if you are traveling in a desert and if one feels thirsty, one should not drink water. Otherwise, you will feel even more thirsty after drinking the water. So people prefer drinking milk. So that normal fellow, the person who could see, he says, "Oh, for a cup of milk." And the blind person poses a question. That blind friend asks that, "My dear friend, you are saying, 'Oh, for a cup of milk.' Now, cup I know, I have sensed it, I have touched it, but can you please help me understand what do you mean by milk?" And this normal fellow says, "Oh, it's very easy. I can help you understand." And so he answers back saying that milk is a kind of white liquid. And the blind friend again poses a question, and he says, "Liquid I know, I have sensed it, I have touched it, but can you please help me understand what do you mean by white? The only color I know since my birth, unfortunately, is black. So can you please help me understand what do you mean by white?" And this normal fellow says, "Oh, it's damn easy. I can help you understand this." And so he answers back saying that white is the color of swan's feathers. See, instead of simplifying the things, he is unnecessarily complicating them. Who knows, maybe he was a professor in one of the institutes. So he says, white is the color of swan's feathers. And the blind friend again poses a question, and he says, feathers I know, I have sensed them, I have touched them. But can you please help me understand what you mean by a swan? By the way, the black swan theory was not originated in those days probably. By the way, it's a figure of speech. So we know that swans are always white. And that's why he says white is the color of swan's feathers. And this friend says that feathers I know, but please help me understand what do you mean by a swan? And now this normal fellow realizes this is not as simple as he would have thought of. For every explanation he is giving, there is a counter question coming back at him. So this time he thinks for a while, and very carefully this time he answers back saying that swan is a bird with a crooked neck. And the blind friend again poses a question. He says, neck I know, even I have a neck, but can you please help me understand what do you mean by crooked? And now this normal friend really gets irritated. So what he does is, he stretches out hand of his blind friend. And he says, this is what I mean by straight. Tell me, do you understand? And the blind friend says, yes. Then he bends that hand in between and says, this is what I mean by crooked. Tell me, do you understand? And the blind friend very calmly answers back saying that, oh, now I understand what you meant by milk. So just see from where this started and where they ended. The story is very interesting, but what we can derive out of this story is even more interesting. So what can we conclude out of this story? Don't walk in desert, sure. Or if at all you are walking in a desert, don't have a blind friend by your side who is pestering you with all those interesting questions. Sure, that's just on the lighter vein, but what we can really derive out of this story is many times, many of us are as blinded as the normal fellow in this story, with our preconceived notions, with our own sweet biases. At times we are ignorant about the things, at times we tend to neglect certain things, and as a culmination of all of this, we get blinded. The moment we get blinded, we start accepting the things blindly, without really thinking about them. And as a result of that, many times we simply keep on missing the big picture. If we don't understand the big picture, how can we actually make a progress? You all are technical writers, technical communicators, and you understand the trends, you understand how the technology is getting evolved much better than common people. And if you understand what's happening in India, if you just look around all the big players with the likes of Infosys and Wipro, I'm just talking about Indian players. All these big champion players used to be solution providers. And nowadays, they are more into services. We have forgotten the art of even delivering the solutions. We are predominantly into services. Forget about developing tools and frameworks and applications, and then building products. When we will start doing it? Honorable Prime Minister of our country, he has launched a very interesting program of Make in India. And if we really want to make in India, we have to move from services to solutions, from solutions to tools, tools to frameworks, frameworks to applications, and from applications to products. And to be able to develop products, we have to have correct mindset. A mindset that will help us defy the conventions. A mindset that will help us think out of the box, go out on a limb, and really step out of our comfort zone. And one solution to all of this is create research culture. Unless and until we have a very sound, very pragmatic, very progressive research culture, we may not be able to cope up with very fast, transient, rapidly changing technological advancements, evolutions. We all the way talk about skill sets. But at the heart of these skill sets, what's going to remain is knowledge. And are we not really missing the big picture? And there, to convince you more, I would like to share one very interesting case study. And this case study is very close to our hearts because it's the home page of all our internet explorers. I'm talking about google.com. If you're in India, I'm talking about google.co.in. When I graduated, I simply could not understand Google's business model. It was very difficult for me to comprehend. And all the degrees that you heard of, I was just hoping to take care of few of my own sweet areas of ignorances. I really wanted to understand the financial aspects. That's why I did MBA with specialization in finance, just to cover up few of my own areas of ignorances. And even after doing that, it's very difficult to really understand the big picture, really understand where exactly Google is taking us to. When I graduated, for me, it was very difficult to really understand how Google is actually earning their revenues. And don't you think that even today, to a large extent, it's still a mystery? I'm talking about 98, 99, when Google used to be just a harmless search engine. And there were other players like Hotmail and Rediffmail, for example. But apart from providing emailers, their main responsibility was also to act as news portals. But for common man, for layman, it was very difficult to understand what Google was up to. And as technical community, as technical communicators, probably let's discuss about it. It was a very interesting piece of business model that they put in together. It was a harmless search engine. There were no pop-up ads. There was no news portal per se. Initially, they did not even have Gmails. So there were no Gmail accounts. And if you remember, Gmail was introduced only by invitation. So there were only few select people with Gmail accounts. And it was only by invitation. And slowly and gradually, they got us into the fabric of the big data analytics. But the fun part is, after every 2 years, they kept changing the name of the technology. And they would come up with some fancy name. And who was doing this? Technical writers. Who was doing this? It was technical communicators coming out of Google. So they started off with a theme of grid computing. And they told the world that, hey, have you heard of grid computing? So we have introduced that. And if you want to search for something, you can retrieve back 50,000 hits in those many milliseconds. After a couple of years, they introduced a new keyword, and they mentioned about intelligent frameworks. And they told us that, have you heard of intelligent frameworks? After a couple of years more, they told us about cloud computing, and they told us that, hey, we are introducing Google Cloud Engine. And now, the recent trend is big data analytics. So that's precisely what they were doing. When I went to United States for the first time, in US, they give you salary only for 9 months. And for the remaining 3 months, you have to earn your own salary. So my very first year, I was very fortunate that I got an internship at Google. And I went to their Seattle office, and it was an amazing experience. I'm talking about 2000. A land of around 250 odd acres, 42 odd buildings, out of which there were personnel only in one building. And remaining 41 buildings, 7-storied buildings, all it had was servers, and that's it. So they were collecting data and information from across the globe. And now they know everything, almost everything about everyone. All the apps that we download and we give away those permissions. You talk about WhatsApp, you talk about Facebook, you talk about any damn app that we make use of on our so-called smart devices and the so-called smart citizens who are going to build smart cities. And Google knows everything about everyone. I would get a message from Google saying that, oh, there is a traffic jam on Senapati Bapat Road. So don't take that route, take a detour. And sometimes it's a privacy breach. I feel like you don't have to tell me I'm good enough to figure the things out. But Google literally knows almost everything about everyone. Google Maps, they know about your position. They know about what kind of information you exchange. They know about what kind of messages you exchange. They know about what kind of banking transactions you do. Because for every single banking transaction, you will get a message on Gmail, for example. They also know if at all you are traveling from a place to another. And they were actually pushing the entire globe towards big data analytics. They were pushing the envelope. We simply couldn't understand that for last 10 odd years. And now, slowly and gradually, we have started realizing it. We have started realizing the potential. If you look at the Google document that they published in 2001, that mentioned about big data analytics, but no one could understand what is big data. Volume, variety, velocity, nobody could understand anything at that point in time. And that's because the big picture was completely missed out. And we will be able to understand the big picture provided A, we have very sound research culture. We start thinking about the things without accepting the things absolutely blindly. Believe me, it is alarming. That's what we have been doing since our school days. Thanks to the British education, that's precisely what we have been doing. We have been continuing that legacy. It's predominantly memory oriented. We have been taught in basic physics that every single material is made up of atoms and molecules. Has anyone seen atoms and molecules under the microscope? I don't think so. We have been told that the gravitational force has some constant value. Have we done any experimentation to figure it out? I can hold a ball and I can apply equal and opposite force to cancel the gravitational force. I will release that ball, I will probably catch it, I will figure out the distance, find out the velocity, and as simple as that, I should be able to find out at least the approximated value of gravitational force. But we don't do that in schools. In schools, all this fun is completely missed out. And all that we care for is memorizing the things so that we can score well in the examination. Sure, that's an important aspect of it, no doubt about it. But ultimately, it boils down to raising questions. And unless and until we raise interesting questions, we won't be able to have dialogues. We have great tradition. We as a country, we have great tradition. And if you look at all our literature, it's a dialogue. You look at Bhagavad Gita, it's a dialogue. Arjun asked few questions which were answered back. You look at Ashtavakra Gita, you look at all the Upanishads, you look at all the Vedas, it's a dialogue. And unless and until the questions are raised, we may not be able to convert the monologues into dialogues. And so we'll have to be very careful. It's not also about raising the questions just for the heck of it, raising quality questions. The questions which can take us further in technological advancement. And I honestly believe as a community, it's our responsibility. Unless and until we really get into this kind of a mode, we may not be able to bring this out of us. We may not be able to, first of all, understand the things. I honestly believe that majority of the inventions, majority of the discoveries are apparent accidents. They appear to us as accidents. They say millions of people saw apples falling down, and it was only one person who asked this question that why are they falling down? I'm talking about Newton, who gave us gravitational force. The modern version of this story is millions of people ate apples, but it was only one person who created Apple, and we are talking about Steve Jobs. But majority of the discoveries and inventions are apparent accidents, and the accidents are bound to happen, but one has to walk the path first. And for walking the path, if you are walking a path in Pune, well, there'll be lots of accidents. But for that to happen, one has to walk the path first. And for walking the path, it is important to see the path. And I really and sincerely hope that such kind of interactions, such kind of platforms will give us that opportunity wherein we can raise relevant questions. We can actually convert monologues into dialogues. As a community, as a technical community, we can really come together and think about the big picture, and hopefully we'll start moving from just being service provider companies to solution provider companies to tools, frameworks, apps, and finally a good, sound, solid products would start coming out of India. But for that, we'll have to create research culture. And research, every big picture is made up of dots. And we have to start filling up those dots, and let's begin it from this particular conference. Let's start doing it from this particular platform. I once again thank the organizers for, first of all, creating this wonderful platform, and particularly giving me this opportunity to share a few of the interesting things that I wanted to share with you. I hope I was able to ask few interesting questions. I was able to make you think in a direction that probably you haven't thought before, and if at all I was able to do so, then I would consider that as a wonderful thing. We always talk about commodity market, and there are commodities like gold and silver that we trade in commodity market. But there are few commodities which are absolutely priceless, like time and attention. And you gave me both. So thank you so very much. Really appreciate it. Thank you.